So this is a story I've been chewing on all summer, and it starts with turtles. I keep almost hitting them. That's new this year, bub. They sit in the lane looking exactly like a leaf until the last second, and I'm swerving a couple times a week now, all over the southern half of the state. Little ones, none of them more than a couple years old. You'll see them the most right when it starts to rain, or just after. I saw turtles as a kid. Big ones. Nothing like this many. I did hit one this summer. I couldn't get around him. I was running a good 45, 50 miles an hour on a rural road, and it was a quick ba-boom. I've thought about him since. I hope he made it. I don't know. Anytime I can save a turtle, I will do my best. The insurance people figure the odds every year on which state's drivers are most likely to hit an animal, and West Virginia has been number one every single year for going on 2 decades. About 1 in 40 here, and nobody else in America is close. Whatever is going on out on these roads, I'm getting a good long look at it. It's not only turtles. This spring, the monarchs came through in the hundreds, lifting off the flowers every time I came around a bend. Lightning bugs are back. I went 5 or 6 years around Charleston without seeing one, and I thought about that a lot, because when I was a kid in Beckley, the backyard was full of them, in town. The deer down around Alderson and Hinton run so thick I told my dad he'd better go hunting this year. And these aren't all fawns and does. I'm seeing pointed bucks, a healthy population. A bear cub ran across the road in front of me this summer. I've seen more snakes too, and 3 separate times I've come up on one somebody cut clean in half and left in the road, both halves laying parallel. I don't have an explanation for that. West Virginia is weird. I had one idea about all this. Every so often, the pipeline and industrial work pushes through some far-out corner of this state, and maybe that's what's shoving the wildlife back in toward the rest of us. I don't think that's it, though. The numbers run the wrong direction. West Virginia is the only state in the country with fewer people in it today than it had in 1950. We peaked at just over 2 million. We're under 1.8 now. Summers County, right where those deer are running, has lost 4 out of every 10 people it had in 1950. McDowell had near 100,000 then. It's under 17,000 today. Keystone, down in McDowell, held 2,900 people at its peak. The last census found 176. 76 years of the room slowly going empty. The people who stayed aren't in the woods the way they were either. At the start of this century, 1 West Virginian in 7 bought a deer license, and now it's about 1 in 30. This is where I have to back the story up though, way up. What I didn't understand until I went digging is that the animals coming back is only half the story. They weren't scarce because people showed up. They were scarce because we took the whole house apart first. 150 years ago, West Virginia was practically all forest, about 15 million acres. Yellow poplars 140 feet tall. Oaks that had stood, some of them, 1,000 years. As late as 1880, 2/3 of this state was still original, uncut forest. 40 years later, it was gone. The band mills came in on 4,000 miles of new railroad, and one mill could eat 17 acres of virgin timber in a day. Then the slash caught fire. Somebody kept count of what started those fires, and 71% of them came off the locomotives. In 1908 alone, 710 fires burned 1.7 million acres, a tenth of the whole state, in 1 year. Up in the spruce country, the fire took the soil itself, burned it down to bedrock, and that's why Dolly Sods looks the way it does today. While all that was going on, a blight nobody could cure was killing the American chestnut. 1 out of every 4 trees in this state. The water went with the woods. Brook trout, the state fish, the only trout native to West Virginia, live in cold water. When the old growth came off, the sun got in, and the streams warmed past what a brook trout can take. They were wiped out of a lot of the streams they'd always held. 500 miles of native trout streams survive, 2% of the stream miles in this state. Stand in 1910 and count what was left. About 1,000 deer, not in a county, in the entire state. Turkeys hanging on in the remotest eastern mountains. The beaver trapped out a century before. No otters to speak of, no fishers, no elk at all. Some of the numbers had been zeros so long, the zeros had dates on them. The last buffalo in West Virginia was a cow, tracked with her calf from Webster Springs over to Valley Head in 1825. They killed them both. The elk were gone by 1890, the last reports near the headwaters of the Tigert and the Greenbrier in 1875. The state's books say the last wolf died in 1900 after decades of bounty money. Webster County tells it more exactly. January of 1897, 15 men and boys, 8 days through sub-zero cold, and at the end of it, a 17-year-old named Daniel Hamrick shot an 87-pound wolf that had eaten one grouse the whole run. The last panther was shot on Tea Creek in Pocahontas County in 1887. Passenger pigeons crossed this state in flocks nobody has seen the likes of since. An 1876 Nicholas County account says the sky was covered over, a roar of wings like a windstorm. The last big flocks came through in 1883, feeding on beech nuts, acorns, and chestnuts, the same chestnuts. The last one anyone recorded here was a single bird shot in Putnam County in 1895. 19 years later, the whole species was one old bird named Martha in a Cincinnati zoo cage, and after her, nothing. There are still about 40 places on our map named for them: Pigeon Roost, Pigeon Branch, Pigeon Creek, a good share of them in the southern counties I drive. The names outlived the birds. The empty woods came first, brother. The empty towns came later. The comeback started on purpose, and what worked was catching wild animals somewhere else and hauling them here. 8 deer from Michigan, let loose near Parsons. 6 beavers on a refuge in Randolph County in 1933. In 1950, the state trapped wild turkeys and released them at Cooper's Rock, then kept moving birds for 39 more years until turkeys lived in all 55 counties again. My favorite detail in the whole story: in 1969, New Hampshire sent us 23 fishers, a big, forest-hunting cousin of the weasel, and West Virginia paid for them in wild turkeys. Straight barter, animal for animal. Between 1984 and 1997, the state turned 245 river otters loose on 14 rivers. The otters took so well that the state just approved doubling the bag limit on them, season after next, while the biologist in charge warned that tripling it would wipe otters back out of parts of the state. The comeback is real, and it is thinner than it looks. Black bears were down to maybe 500 animals in 10 mountain counties in the early 70s. The estimate now is close to 15,000. Hunters here have taken over 7 million deer since 1945, from a population that stood at 1,000 in 1910. The encyclopedia of this state puts the herd today at more than 500,000. That comes out to 500 deer for every one we had left. Not everything rode in on a truck. Nobody brought the coyote here. None in frontier times, none in the logging days. They walked in on their own around the middle of the last century, took hold in the 70s and 80s, and now they run every county in West Virginia, wanted or not. The bobcat never left at all. It rode out the empty century in the Laurel, and when the state finally counted a few years ago, there were enough to keep an open season. Ravens waited out the bad years up in the high spruce, the same country that burned down to rock, then spread back out across 4 states from that refuge. Nobody carried a single raven anywhere. The other half of the story is the part nobody planned. In 1935, this state had 104,000 farms. Over 60% of West Virginia was farmland then, hillside pasture and hayfields, a lot of it feeding the horses that did the work. The tractor retired the horses. The mines mechanized, the mills closed, and the people started leaving. Today, about 22,000 farms are left, working less than a quarter of the ground. An abandoned field doesn't stay a field either. Give it 3 years and it's broom sedge. 5 and the cedar and blackberry move in, and the rabbits and the quail with them. Give it a generation and it's young woods full of turkey and grouse and deer. Nobody replanted West Virginia. People left, and the woods walked back in. In 1900, 61% of this state was cleared land. Today, it's 78% forest, third most forested in the country. If you want to see what the first forest looked like, you've got about 2 places left to stand in. 130 acres on Gaudineer Knob, spared because a surveyor's compass was off, and 133 more at Cathedral State Park, sold to the state on a promise that no axe would touch it. Out of 10 million acres of virgin timber, that's roughly what you can still drive to. Some of it carries a bitter kind of symmetry. When the elk came back in 2016, 24 of them from western Kentucky, the first in West Virginia in more than 140 years, the state released them onto 25,000 acres of reclaimed strip mine down in Logan County. The herd grazes on grass that exists because the mountain got taken apart first. 2 years after those elk stepped off the trailer, the federal government took the eastern cougar off the endangered species list. Not because it recovered, because it was gone. 131 years after the last one was shot on T Creek. The death certificate is newer than the elk crates. People here still see panthers, or swear they do. The DNR will tell you there's no breeding population, likely a bobcat, a coyote, somebody's big dog, and the reports keep coming anyway. There is one documented case. In 2011, a young male cougar died under an SUV on the Wilbur Cross Parkway in Milford, Connecticut, the first confirmed cougar there in over a century. DNA traced him to the Black Hills of South Dakota, through Minnesota and Wisconsin. 1,500 miles, maybe 1,800, one of the longest walks ever recorded for a land mammal on this continent that we're aware of. His route ran north of us the whole way. One cat proved the walk back can be done. The proof ended under a bumper. Even the trash tells this story. When I was a kid, every bend and every holler road had its dump. Washing machines, tires, appliances rusting down the bank. I remember it clear. The law changed in '88. No new open dumps, and crews have been hauling the old ones out ever since. 98 tons of litter and 89 whole dumps in one spring cleanup alone. The roadsides I drive now are cleaner than the ones I grew up looking at. The rivers carry the same plot. In the spring of 1994, an illegally sealed mine in Preston County blew out a hillside and sent acid down Muddy Creek. The Cheat River ran orange for 16 miles. At times, the water ran as acidic as lemon juice. Everything in the water's path died, and a second blowout the next year put the Cheat on the list of the 10 most endangered rivers in America. The people up there organized, and in May of 1995, they threw a festival for their dead river. That festival is still going 30 years later, and the walleye are back. A fish that can't stand dirty water, spawning up a canyon where 20 years ago nothing lived. Down my way, that same argument plays out on the Kanawha, and I've been on both sides of it. Two women I knew back then, I'll call them Pam and Delta, always told me not to eat anything I caught out of that river. They were right, and they still are. The state still says don't eat the catfish, the carp, or the suckers out of that stretch. That list has been getting shorter though. There were more fish on it back when I was living down there than there are on it now. I was in Nitro at the time, right on the water. I asked them one time, I bet you all went swimming in that river when you were young girls, didn't you? Oh yeah, all the time. Well, I said, it was a whole lot dirtier back then than it is now. And I'll put my feet down in that water. It don't bother me a bit. Now I'm sure there's about a foot of mercury laying on the bottom of it. But that's neither here nor there. Back in July, driving home from Jaeger at night, I said something into my recorder that I'll give you close to word for word. I get the after picture of everything, and I have to place in my mind how it looked when it was alive, when there were people everywhere living their lives. Now it's just nature, and nature is beautiful and powerful. I gotta square those things. That's what I hope to do on this channel. Now the honest part, because a good theory deserves a fact check. Biologists have known for 20-some years that roads are one of the things that actually holds turtle numbers down. Turtles take a decade or more to grow up, so losing the grown ones is what does the damage. It falls hardest on the mothers, because a female has to cross to lay her eggs. Where roads run thick, the counts skew male. In the turtles they counted, painted turtles ran about half male on the quiet side, and close to 3 of every 4 where the roads were dense. Snapping turtles hit 95 males for every 100. Across the country, those ratios have kept tipping male, and the people counting lay it on nesting females dying on the road. One study ran the math. A population has to keep better than 9 of every 10 adults alive each year just to hold even. Fewer cars genuinely matters to a turtle in a way it doesn't to a rabbit. When COVID emptied the roads in 2020, road kill dropped by 1/3 in the states they measured, and the deer and the birds eased in toward the quiet. It didn't last. The quiet had a catch in it too. Counted across the whole country, the total number of animals hit never went down that year. The wildlife moved onto the empty roads about as fast as the traffic left them, and the drivers still out there were hitting animals at a higher rate per mile than before. A box turtle can live 50 years, sometimes 100, and it spends that whole span inside a home range smaller than a couple of acres. A circle may be 750 feet across. The road never crossed that turtle's path. The road moved into its living room and stayed. The little ones I keep swerving around could mean the nests are finally making it. Though at one of the longest running turtle study sites in the country, over in Maryland, box turtles have been thinning since the 70s, with hardly any young coming up. I can tell you what I see. I've learned to be careful about what it means. Honesty also means saying the rebound is not the whole roster. While the deer thickened, the bats collapsed. A fungus called white nose showed up in this state's caves around 2009 and cut the little brown bats down about 97% inside 5 years. The state's most important bat cave went from 18,500 Indiana bats to fewer than 800. In the same woods, over the same years, the big brown bats and the red bats actually increase. The whippoorwill, the sound a summer night here is supposed to make, is down about 2/3 across its range since the 60s. As for the lightning bugs I went years without seeing, nobody was counting. The first serious attempt to size up this continent's fireflies had to mark over half the species it assessed data deficient, which is a scientist's way of saying nobody knows. My 5 missing years in Charleston aren't in anybody's dataset but mine. Every night I drive, especially down in the southern part of the state, the windshield ends up caked in bug guts, and the lightning bugs are the ones you really see when they hit. Even the monarchs I watched come through by the hundreds. The count down in Mexico was up 64% this past winter, 2nd year running, and the people who watch them closest still say the long line points down. Nobody has studied what 76 years of slow emptying does to the wildlife of a place either. Not here, not anywhere in Appalachia. The closest anybody has come to running that study is Japan. Their population is predicted to drop 24% by 2050, and about 1/5 of their farm settlements already sit empty. In 2020, their version came out, a strategy paper on managing wildlife in the parts of the country going empty. And what it describes is the animals' ranges expanding into the ground people left, crop damage and conflict expanding with them. For now, it's me and my windshield running the only long-term survey this state's got. Here's my theory then, and I'll say up front what I said the first time. I don't know if it's a good sign. This state got taken down to the studs 100 years ago. The trees, the soil in places, the animals, and then the people. Some of the wildlife we carried back in crates. Some of it walked in on its own, into hayfields nobody mows anymore, and hollers nobody lives in. Past dumps somebody finally hauled away. What if the animals are moving back into the room we stopped using? That wouldn't be a terrible thing, almost like one benefit coming up out of all the misery and loss this state has carried. The forest came back. The old forest never will, and neither will the wolf, the panther, or the pigeons that covered the sky. Most of the people won't either. I'm glad there's life coming around. One more thing, since the turtles started all this. If you stop for one, I hope you do, carry it straight across in the direction it was pointed, and set it down. Don't take it somewhere safer. There is no somewhere safer. A box turtle has a homing instinct, and moved out of its own 2 acres it will spend the season trying to walk home. 20 feet of help in the direction it already chose. That's the whole job. The turtles don't know why the roads got quiet. They just know they did.